Global happenings today. We communicate, we analyze global news. Stay tuned. Hello guys, welcome to Global Happenings. Today we have a trending news here for you. And the headline of the news reads, U.S. highest ranking senator lists Buhari's crime as he blocks the repatriation of $320 million Abacha's loot. See details. But before we continue with details of the news and further analysis, we'd like to encourage you to please subscribe to our channel by clicking on the red subscribe button and also on the bell icon so that you can get notification anytime we publish videos on YouTube. All right, let's look at the news in detail. The Nigerian government has kicked against an attempt by United States lawmaker Senator Grassley to block the repatriation of $320 million laundered by the late head of state, General Sani Abacha. Grassley, who is the highest-ranking senator in the U.S., has asked the Department of Justice why the U.S. was returning such funds to Nigeria, despite the high record of human rights violation perpetuated by the government of the President of Muhammadu Buhari. The U.S. senator, who is an ally of President Donald Trump, wondered why the U.S. should help Nigeria to repatriate Abacha's loot when it was clear that the next tranche from the U.K. would be given to Governor Atiku Bagudu of Kebbi State, an alleged accomplice of Abacha. In the letter dated April 1st, 2020, which was addressed to Deborah Connor, Chief Money Laundering and Asset Recovery Section of the Department of Justice, Grassley made reference to a Bloomberg report which exposed Nigeria's arrangement with Bagudu. The letter reads in part, and I quote, it said, in 2014, the Isles of Jersey, a British dependency, seized more than $320 million laundered by the corrupt former dictator of Nigeria, General Sani Abacha. After a long legal battle, the Isles of Jersey and the United States have entered into an agreement to repatriate this money back to Nigeria in the coming months. Yet, according to a recent Bloomberg article, the current Nigerian government is refusing to help the U.S. Department of Justice finalize a second for future action against a separate $100 million in Abacha's loot. In addition to the lack of cooperation, if Nigeria did receive the second batch of funds, it intends to return the money to an official who DOJ says was involved in corruption with Abacha. Grassley, who is the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, said Buhari's government also perpetuated the abuse of human rights. The senator said, and I quote, there are also serious human rights concerns under President Muhammadu Buhari's government. Nigeria faces violation undermining freedom of religion, freedom of speech, due process, and the rule of law. In late December, the U.S. State Department labeled Nigeria a severe violator of religious freedom. The Buhari's government-owned agencies have also abused the civil liberties of innocent Nigerian citizens. Last December, rearrest and detention of a U.S. green card-holding journalist is just the latest high-profile example. The rearrest and detainment of New Jersey resident Omoyele Sowore just one day after he was released by judicial court is a clear testament to its glaring contempt of judicial opinion and the rule of law. Mr. Sowore, an activist journalist and former political opponent of President Buhari, is still being detained, a blatant transgression of international norm. Grassley also lambasted the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, and the Chairman Economic Financial Crime Commission, Ibrahim Magu, accusing them of being agent of oppression of Buhari's political opponent. However, the IAGF, in a statement by his spokesperson Umar Gwandu, said the accusations were baseless. The statement read in part, the evidence on the ground established that the federal government operation in the fight against corruption are carried out without fear or favor. Malami added that members of the ruling or opposition party and otherwise are in no way swayed in view of numerical data of recorded judicial convictions. Meanwhile, the federal government said it has not entered into any agreement to concede any amount of money to any individual in relation to over $300 million to be repatriated to Nigeria from island of New Jersey. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami made the clarification in a statement by his media aide Kwandu. The minister stated that the federal government was exclusively bound by a tripartite agreement entered into and signed by the federal government and Nigeria, United States of America, and island of Jersey for the repatriation of over $300 million fund referred to as Abacha's loot. He added that no individual was named to be a beneficiary of any amount in the tripartite agreement. Malami said the international community had developed confidence in the present administration in view of the fact that looted funds recovered by the regime of the President Major General Muhammadu Buhari were judiciously utilized for high-impact public-oriented projects. He said in the document of the agreement, it was clearly spelled out that the money would be utilized on the Abuja-Kano and Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, as well as the second Niger Bridge only. The minister said that the country had no problem enforcing agreement and treaties. Therefore, it was impossible and unimaginable for Nigeria to hand over some amount of money to a third party not expressly mentioned in the agreement. Wow, that was a great one there. And I want to say that Nigerians are really talking in respect of a lot of these things that have been mentioned. That's why I'm always of the opinion that we must try to be careful the way we do things, because even whatever you are doing, people are watching. You may be thinking that none of these things are in the public eyes and all of that, or you may be saying I'm absolutely in charge, so nothing will ever go wrong and all of that. Imagine what has been like the utmost reason for preventing the repatriation of the 320 million naira of Abacha, $1 million of Abacha's loot. One of it is because most of Nigerians' fundamental human rights have been traded upon, and they have also heard via medias and via videos and via news that most persons, most of the so-called fight against corruption is targeted at the opposition. And it's not a thing of generality, it's targeted at some set of people. The case of Amoyele Sowore also came up, and they pointed to the fact that despite the court releasing him, that the president, the government refused. They released him today and picked him up. No respect for the rule of law and all of that. And on that grounds, the highest ranking senator is saying that Nigerian should not be avail the said amount, despite the fact that it has already they've entered into an agreement, everything has been signed and almost in the process of being repatriated. So right now Nigerians are trying to revalidate the fact that such things that he had talked about are not true. And with that in mind, before they need to call Nigerians again, call the Attorney General of the Federation and other person involved to come back again and let them talk over this issue. When this money was about to be released, precisely the amount was, I think, 308 million was about to be released. The first thing that came on board was that a particular amount, 100 million naira, $100 million was going to be given to the governor of Kebbi State, talking about Bagudu, Atiku Bagudu, that they will give it to him because there was an agreement, an established agreement between the Nigerian government and, the governor that so amount of money, when recovered, so amount will be given to him because he was the lead person that showed where the monies were. That was what we heard, and said, first of all, that agreement was entered into between Obasanjo and Kebbi state governor. And these guys are like, how did he get to know it? Because he was part of the process of, looting this money. How can you allow someone who was part of that government to enter into an agreement with you that if I show you where the money is and the money is being repatriated back to Nigeria, I have the legal right of enjoying $100 million from that money? That was where the whole thing boiled down to. That this guy is actually a culprit, and they should allow his own money to be confiscated, and it should be released for interrogation. Right now, that's where the whole thing is revolving around. And the sins of this present day government have been listed, which they had clearly shown that with this sin that have been committed by this present day government, there is no way that they can allow that money to come. And guess what? With this kind of information, automatically they will slow pace the process of repatriation of that money. Clearly made mention of the case of the rearrest and detainment of Amoyele Sowore, whom they claim that is a New Jersey resident. And according to them, they said he's still under captivity. He's still under the grip of the government because, number one, he cannot leave this place, Abuja, right now. He must station there. He can't even travel to abroad. Because the truth is that despite the fact that they have released him, he is not free to do anything on the grounds of what? Just because he said that, oh, the government must give us the required change that was in their manifesto. And all of a sudden, everything turned upside down. And before we know, he said it's actually treasonable felony, that he wanted to overturn the government and all of that. According to him, he said it's a no-gun business. We want the government to give us exactly what they told Nigerians that they are going to give to Nigerians, and we're going to be okay. And they told us they're going to bring a change from where we are to where we are expected to be. But that's not what we are seeing. And because of that, he was arrested. And that particular action against Amoyele Sowore is now hindering the repatriation of such a huge amount of money. And I can assure you, Nigerians will want that money to be held back by the United States, because the truth is that the present day government is not accountable. Transparency is on a zero level. Imagine the palliatives that have been released by individuals, not even by government, by corporate individual, by individuals, and they're saying, oh, this is the money that have been released. How is it being expended? The way they are going about it, most Nigerians who are, who understand how to run this show have clearly said, please do electronic transfer. Forget this issue of saying you are handing money to people's hand. No, let's get their own, so that for accountability purposes, it's not for any purpose. If you are working in an NGO, for example, I always like to call that up. Working in an NGO, for example, whatever money you are given, you are expected to retire it. And whenever it has to do with funds, whenever it has to do with finances, they expect you to get the account number of those who were part of that training, and effect raise a schedule, that's a schedule, bank schedule, send it to the bank so that they can effect transfer electronically into the account. Immediately you present it and say, this is it, and the phone numbers of those people are clearly spelled out. Before you know, they won't even go into the process of trying to over-interrogate you, because that is just an affirmation. As far as there is a bank stamp on it that you have transferred those monies to those people, and they also put 1 or 2, 3 times phone call to those people, and they affirm that is it. But instead, despite all of that, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, choose to be giving the money by hand to people. How can we account for this? How can you tell Nigerians that you were able to pay as much as 2-point-something billion naira to how many number of people by hand? How easy it is. Is it just a simple process? You call up anybody, you do not even know whether they are in the same family. You don't even know if they have the same surname. You don't care whether they are caregivers, because anybody can disguise himself and come there repeatedly and collect the money. Nobody will say anything. So what are we talking about? And how can you tell us that you can deal with more than 100 and something thousand, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 5,000 people in a single day, giving them such a huge amount of money? How possible is that? Stories telling here and there, when Nigerians began to talk about accountability for those monies that were put under the leaders given to government as palliative to the people, before we know, it was a case of fire. Fire has entered the treasury room of Accountant General. we are hopeful that nothing is destroyed, because that will trigger some kind of Nigerians will begin to suspect it. This morning I saw the video saying, please, if fire has entered the accountant general office, return my father's money that he gave to you people to throw around to the people. Return it back. We are tired. Just looking at the level of lack of accountability. Most people are already tired. And that's the same thing these guys are capitalizing on. I'm talking about United States of America. That's what they're capitalizing on, and they're getting angry. That why should such a huge amount, when we know that the current government have trampled on the fundamental human right of the people? There is no form of freedom of speech, freedom of education is not there. Freedom of religion is not there. They made mention of the case of Sowore and other persons. And even with that, if this issue of coronavirus did not come up, there would have still be a huge pursuance for passing into law the anti-social media bill, just to make sure that everything is overly regulated, so that whatever that is considered secret in Nigeria will remain secret. These are some of the reasons that Grassley held upon and said, with all of this in mind, I cannot sit back and see you guys returning such a huge amount of money to these people. Why? Because they look at us as people who are not accountable, as people as those who have the capacity to even loot the return looted fund. With all of that, he's just standing his ground and saying, hey, it can't happen in his time. And I think that the government need to do something about this. This is really